On a different part of the snowfield, Wekapipo and Magenta endure the bittering cold. As Magenta taps on a thermometer, he notes that the temperature has dropped to 35 degrees below zero. Both men agree that no racer would currently dare to cross the frozen lake, fearing their horses wouldn't survive it. Wekapipo's thoughts wander back to his past. His younger sister had always dreamed of seeing the ocean, and on her wedding day, she finally had the chance. She married a wealthy financial commissioner, a match Wekapipo had arranged, believing that it would secure her future. However, the marriage fell apart within 6 months, and one night, Wekapipo visited his sister, only to find her face bruised and beaten. Enraged, he sought to confront her husband, but she begged him not to. The situation worsened when her sister accidentally knocked over a vase, revealing that because of the beatings, she had gone blind in her left eye. Determined to protect her, Wekapipo sought the Pope's permission to annul the marriage. This action infuriated her husband, who retaliated by attacking Wekapipo and mocking his sister. Their feud culminated in a duel, despite his sister's tearful protests for them not to. At dawn, Wekapipo faced the commissioner, both armed with their steel balls instead of swords. Their weapons clashed with a spark of steel, and Wekapipo's ball struck true, piercing his opponent's eye. Though victorious, Wekapipo was ambushed by hooded men the commissioner had brought along with him, who attacked him for breaking their supposed rule of fairness. Despite his protests, Wekapipo was exiled from his homeland, bringing shame to his family. Worse still, his sister died a year later, leaving him without a cause to even fight for. And honestly here, I really want to bring this up early on in the series, just because a lot of people who, first read Steel Ball Run and everything don't seem to understand this meaning here, or like what happens at the very end of the story as well. But like, this here is just proving what Johnny's mouse represents in fate pretty much. His sister ended up dying a year later, leaving him without a cause to fight for. Even though he did all of this and was exiled from his homeland, it meant nothing in the end because his sister technically died. But that's just fate, you do what you do in the time that you're given. Either way, I don't want to get into it too much now. I want to speak on it more when I do finish, obviously, Steel Ball Run and everything in general. We've still got quite a few chapters to go, but you can kind of see that over the last hour and a half of the video, fate has kind of started to play more of a prevalent role in the series, and it's something that I think you should all just like kind of pay notice of in the background. I don't always bring it up because obviously I've had to shorten things so much because the chapters get so long at specific points, but yeah, it's extremely critical to the story. Back to the main story now. Sometime later, President Valentine approached Wekapipo with an offer. In exchange for tracking down the corpse parts in the 6th stage and assassinating Gyro and Johnny, he would be granted citizenship, permanent residency, and a high-ranking position in his government. Left with no purpose in life pretty much, Wekapipo accepted these offers. Now, in the snowy fields with Magenta, the duo track their targets. Magenta's incessant coughing and lame-ass jokes test Wekapipo's patience. Opening a map, our boy estimates Johnny and Gyro's location is near Lake Superior or Lake Michigan. Magenta's ramblings though about flying machines do little to distract him from the main mission ahead. Meanwhile, Gyro uses a steel ball to check the frozen lake's thickness, finding it at only 43 centimeters thick, currently too dangerous for them to cross. Johnny suggests taking a ferry, but Gyro hesitates, distracted by a wolf currently trailing them. It turns out that it's not actually trailing them because it wants to murk them and everything. Johnny had fed it once in the past, earning its persistent attention and probably protection. The pair then spot 3 other racers: Poco Loco, the goat who's still in it, Norisuke Higashikata, who I didn't mention but I think I put a note in that he obviously survived at the end there, meaning that the Higashikata bloodline lives on and everything, and Josuke is still going to be a part of the story and Moria and all that kind of jazz, and obviously Baba Yaga, all riding towards them. With only 15 kilometers to the next stage's goal, it's clear to the boys that all of the others plan to risk crossing the frozen lake here. The stakes are extremely high. First place earns obviously 100 points, and Gyro dreads Poco Loco gaining an insurmountable lead. While debating their options, Johnny touches the snow and notes the proximity of another corpse part, specifically the feet. Over with the others, Poco Loco reaches the frozen lake first, and without hesitation rushes forth, spurring Gyro's concern. Johnny notices 2 more riders in pursuit of him, Wekapipo and Magenta. Gyro recognizes Wekapipo and quickly realizes that they have to be enemies here. As Poco Loco then speeds across the ice, Wekapipo hurls a steel ball in the boys' direction. Gyro counters with one of his own, but Wekapipo's superior ball deflects it and scatters smaller projectiles called satellites towards the racers. So if anyone's confused with, why the dude actually has a steel ball and everything here, these satellites, or the 14 steel balls that are embedded in the main steel ball of Wekapipo's weapon, were designed for Imperial guards of the Empire. Instantly, Johnny and Gyro drop to the ground, narrowly avoiding injury, but the delay allows Wekapipo and Magenta to close the gap. Johnny laments about being targeted despite not possessing any corpse parts, but Johnny identifies Wekapipo's steel ball and recalls how the man was actually presumed dead. As they prepare to defend themselves, a strange phenomenon begins. Johnny's body starts to randomly fall apart, and Gyro soon experiences the same thing. Despite the disorientating effect, Gyro tries to keep his friend calm. For Wekapipo and Magenta though, the only goal they have in mind is to defeat the Zeppeli golden rectangle and complete their deadly mission. Falling into the past once more, Gyro remembers a time when he and his mother were presented with a female patient who had fallen down the stairs and arrived at their facility in critical condition. A quick x-ray with his steel balls revealed something odd, prompting Gyro to confront his mother. He recognized the patient as one of his father's cases, and her optic nerves in one eye were weirdly destroyed. Despite his mother mimicking his father's usual stern advice to focus on saving her life instead, Gyro remained determined to restore her sight. He proposed rejoining her severed optic nerves with a steel ball, but his mother tried to steer him back to the immediate emergency. Ignoring this, Gyro asked if the woman had any family, but was only told that she had a brother, Wekapipo, a former Imperial guard who was already dead. Undeterred by the situation's taboo nature, Gyro studied the golden ratio through nearby leaves, sterilized his steel ball, and operated on the woman's damaged optic nerves. Back in the present day, Johnny and Gyro's horses press forward as they try to make sense of their bodies seemingly falling apart. While Johnny panics, Gyro yells for him to calm down and reveals that their pursuer is Wekapipo, a former Imperial guard from his country. He explains that they have been struck by left-hand ataxia, a condition induced by Wekapipo's specialized steel ball technique, Wrecking Ball. The technique's shockwaves alone were enough to distort them, causing a temporary inability to sense or perceive anything on their left. When Johnny frantically tests this and confirms the loss of feeling, his panic spikes once more. Gyro warns him that the enemy will likely strike from their blind spots and orders him to turn constantly while looking to the right. Following this advice, Johnny spots Magenta high above them, perched on a sled and armed with a shotgun. Reacting quickly, Johnny fires his nail bullet. As Wekapipo acknowledges Gyro's knowledge of his abilities and identity, Johnny's bullets somehow manage to dismantle Magenta's gun, proving their continued effectiveness. Suddenly, the boys realize Gyro has been shot in his left hand, a wound he couldn't perceive due to ataxia. Enraged, Gyro retaliates with a steel ball, but that too is deflected. Both racers grow alarmed as they realize something unusual is happening. Wekapipo slowly advances towards them on foot, forcing Gyro to remind Johnny of their opponent's dangerous skill sets. With his nails starting to grow back, Johnny laments on their situation, being pursued despite not really having any corpse parts. Gyro speculates that Wekapipo might know the location of the next part and is trying to eliminate them because they're currently too close. Johnny disagrees though, citing that only the corpse's spine, currently with hot pants, can pinpoint the next part's location. The enemies remain positioned on either side of them, with Wekapipo recalling his earlier encounter with the final of the 11 doppelgangers. During that encounter, he noticed the rough map by Johnny's feet, depicting the Mackinac Straits and an image of an animal. This combined with President Valentine's warnings about the corpse parts' ability to merge with other entities draws Wekapipo's attention to the wolf trailing Johnny and Gyro. Opposing them, Johnny's nails finish growing, but he struggles to find a reference for the golden ratio amidst the barren, icy landscape. Before he can act, Wekapipo hurls 2 more steel balls towards them. Gyro counters with 2 of his own, but his efforts are in vain as Wekapipo's steel balls knock them aside with absolute ease. Turns out that the ex-Imperial Guard has actually anticipated their reliance on nature for the golden ratio, and left them grappling with their massive disadvantage in the wide open snowfields. In the past, back when Gyro treated Wekapipo's sister for her injuries, he had also tried to fix her eyesight in the same surgery. After it came to an end, he lit a match and swung it across her eyes, trying to confirm if the surgery worked. Sadly, it did not, so Gyro ended up beating himself up and calling himself a failure. In return though, the patient still thanked him for treating her wounds, given that she had been blind long before she reached this hospital. This didn't stop Gyro from feeling like shit though, and he made things worse by comparing himself to his father. Fast forward back to the present, Gyro and Johnny can only watch as Wekapipo's steel ball continues to approach them. Gyro then yells at his friend to shoot down the satellites with his nail bullet, so Johnny tries to shoot down as many as he can, causing them to start deflecting mid-air. Taking in the environment around him though, Magenta abruptly picks up a shotgun and blows a hole in the wolf's head, catching everybody off guard. Johnny is so distracted that Gyro has to pull his attention to the two satellites still making their way towards them. He manages to shoot one down, but the other still comes straight at them. Luckily, Gyro is dumb enough to protect his friend by using his good hand to block the satellite from hitting him. Of course, it also gets destroyed, but it doesn't stop Magenta from drawing closer to them as well. Johnny laments about using up all 10 of his nails and gets a lecture from Gyro instead of a helpful suggestion. Apparently Wekapipo is the kind of hunter that takes away the advantages of his prey one at a time, applying his training from his time as an Imperial Guard. This is also why he chose a frozen strait to remove the advantage of the golden ratio. Meanwhile, Wekapipo himself is busy feeling proud of Magenta for taking the wolf out, so they won't have to chase it down after taking care of Gyro and Johnny. Mere moments after this, the left hand of ataxia begins to take effect and Magenta begins to disappear before their eyes. Still on the floor, Johnny screams in an attempt to warn his friend, but Gyro is too engrossed in trying to grab his steel ball before his left side disappears completely. Unfortunately for our boy, he doesn't make it in time and his body starts to fall apart. Opposite them, a creepy Magenta wields his handgun and resolves to shoot Gyro first because Johnny is currently out of nail bullets and can't really do anything. Little does he know though, that Johnny had already grabbed a hold of a steel ball. He then uses the track marks in the snow to speculate the enemy's location, and just as he is about to get shot, he throws the steel ball with as much force as he can muster. Too surprised to move in the face of this, Magenta gets struck by the ball and only his spilled blood serves as proof that he actually got hit. Before the racers can even celebrate though, Gyro senses that their enemy will seek vengeance soon, so he pushes Johnny as they take cover. While screaming out about the wound on his shoulder, Magenta begins to shoot sporadically in the duo's direction and complains to Wekapipo about the left half of ataxia not being effective enough. Rebuting this though, the ex-Imperial Guard lets him know that his entire hand would have been taken off if Gyro gained access to the golden ratio. Magenta grits his teeth in frustration before firing off more shots, this time hitting Gyro square in the gut. The bullets keep flying as Johnny starts frantically searching for the missing steel ball. Through clenched teeth, Gyro mutters that the ball isn't lost, it's lodged in his stomach. Summoning his resolve, he fishes out the bullet Magenta had shot into him, even as Magenta himself curses under his breath. Wekapipo warns his partner about Gyro's next move, but it's already too late. With absolute precision, Gyro aims and sends the bullets flying straight for Magenta's face. Magenta reacts just in time, activating his stand, 20th century boy, to deflect the projectile. A brief calm descends on the battlefield as Gyro and Johnny finally regain perception on their left sides. The missing steel ball then also comes into view, glinting in the snow. Both racers exchange a quick glance before turning their eyes towards Magenta, who smirks and mockingly dares Johnny to retrieve it, claiming he doesn't care if he does now. During this lull though, Gyro contemplates whether the wolf they had seen earlier might have actually been the host of the next corpse part. Before he can voice his thoughts though, Wekapipo snaps at Magenta to stop wasting time talking to the enemy. Realizing his mistake, Magenta raises his gun to fire again, only for a bullet to fall from the sky and pierce straight through his skull. Gyro then smirks, mocking him, while asking if he forgot about the one that he sent flying earlier. The sight sends Wekapipo into a rage, and he immediately closes the distance between himself and the two racers. Gyro, visibly armed now, yells at Johnny to brace himself and prepare to counter their relentless foe. As the enemy closes in, Gyro grips his steel balls with bloodied hands, his breath uneven, while Johnny, trembling but resolute, readies his nail bullets. His voice cracks with urgency as he screams, demanding guidance from his partner. Gyro, ever focused, keeps harping on about finding the golden rectangle, a concept Johnny is beyond tired of hearing about. Exasperated, he snaps back, reminding Gyro for what feels like the 100th time that they're in a world of ice, not a geometry textbook. Wekapipo readies his attack, and the tension thickens. Panic claws at Johnny, his breath hitching as Gyro barks in order, cover him while he makes his way to the wolf. The part-time doctor has a wild theory. If he can just get to the wolf, there might be some part of it tied to the golden rectangle, or better yet, maybe the corpse part hidden within aligns with that elusive perfect ratio. But Wekapipo doesn't wait for Gyro to finish dreaming up his plans. Instead, he lets loose a steel ball, its precision unmistakable. Gyro is forced to respond, hurling one of his own, not as a direct counter though, but as a calculated move aimed straight at their enemy. The result? Wekapipo's steel ball randomly veers, leaving Johnny to fend off all of the satellites himself. Gyro's voice cuts through the storm of action, shouting at Johnny that he must stop every single one. Johnny only manages to destroy most of them. One satellite though sneaks through, slamming into his arm with a sickening thud. As he grunts in pain, Gyro finally reaches the end of his own struggle. Wekapipo's steel ball hits the ground near him, its satellite swarm absolutely spent. Johnny shouts out a shaky confirmation. The satellites are all dealt with. Together, they then watch as Gyro's steel ball collides with Wekapipo's chest, the impact forcing blood from his mouth in a gruesome spray. However, that doesn't cut Wekapipo down. With a pained gasp, he rotates another steel ball against his left side, countering the effects of Gyro's attack. His laboured breathing echoes around them, almost mocking in its persistence, like an overweight man after an uphill sprint. To both Johnny and Gyro's shock, Wekapipo somehow knows how to use the Zeppeli family rotation. Annoyed with this, Gyro doesn't waste time. He sprints over to the wolf as Johnny yells a frantic warning. Wekapipo is preparing another steel ball attack. The X-Guard's weapon then sails through the air, but Gyro counters instinctively, sending one of his own in response. Yet, the unexpected happens. Wekapipo's ball targets the wolf instead, shattering the ice and exposing the poor creature to the bitter cold beneath. The wolf howls, blood massing its fur, but the move buys time for Wekapipo. Now, with everyone bleeding, their breaths fogging the icy air, Wekapipo smirks through the pain, declaring it was obvious Gyro would chase after the golden rectangle. With a flick of his wrist, he recalls his steel balls, the weapons floating back to him with an eerie precision. Gyro tries to do the same, but his movement falters, his left half succumbing to the creepy paralysis of ataxia. Amid the chaos, Gyro and Johnny try to figure out when the satellite struck them. Still, our Italian boy remains obsessively focused, scanning for anything resembling the golden rectangle. Desperation gnaws at him, and he questions if this is how his life will end. Will Wekapipo actually beat him here? The thoughts sent his mind spiraling until Johnny's anguished scream jolts him back. Falling into the past, Gyro's memory then stirs as he remembers his father's voice. The Zeppeli family believes in miracles, the old man had said. If ever in doubt, pray for one. And if summoned by that prayer, Gyro's eyes catch sight of a snowflake, perfect in its symmetry. Hope ignites in his chest. With renewed determination, he throws his steel ball. The two projectiles then clash mid-air, and against all odds, Gyro's steel ball shatters Wekapipo's. Wekapipo, dazed and clutching his chest, stares in disbelief. Johnny, ever perceptive, realises something strange. It's snowing, but only around Wekapipo and Gyro. He pieces it together. The water from the broken ice has somehow frozen in the air, forming snowflakes, and within those snowflakes, Gyro has managed to find the golden rectangle. Armed with this revelation, Gyro throws another steel ball, now guided by the golden ratio. It pierces Wekapipo's weapon effortlessly, tearing through his defense and leaving a clean, devastating wound.
"君は選ばれたんだ。何かの力があんたの方を選んだ。選ばれた。奇跡だよ."
Johnny, meanwhile, figures out the bigger picture. The 11th doppelganger had to have glimpsed the wolf because the spine revealed the location of the next corpse part. That's why Wekapipo ended up targeting the wolf, as it must be hiding the fragment within it. With the battle's outcome clear, Gyro and Wekapipo exchange words. Gyro doesn't take credit for the snowflake miracle, but Wekapipo insists it was just that, a miracle. Then, shockingly, the X-Guard attempts to stab himself with a dagger, but Gyro, quick as ever, deflects the blade with his last steel ball. Wekapipo, resigned, urges Gyro to end him, warning that his employer won't spare him anyway. But Gyro drops a bombshell. Wekapipo's sister is alive. His father had hidden her in the countryside, and her pursuers, deeming her blindness a curse, abandoned their hunt. Wekapipo clutches his bleeding chest, struggling to process this truth. But Gyro's focus shifts as their horses bolt in a frenzy. A glance reveals the wolf still standing despite its injuries. Johnny, bewildered, questions how in the world the friggin' wolf is alive. Gyro points out to a log beneath the shattered ice and deduces that the satellites only graze the wolf. This log also marks an old path the natives once to use to cross beneath the frozen lake. This revelation clarifies another detail. Poco Loco must be blindly winging his way forward. Calling their horses back though and not worrying about it for the time being, Gyro and Johnny plan to patch up their wounds and continue the race. Before they leave though, Gyro turns to Wekapipo, offering one last piece of advice. Protect Lucy's steel. If he needs a reason to live, let it be that one. Riding off, Gyro then leaves Wekapipo to ponder his new purpose. I honestly found it quite cool that in the end, both the Italian boys could, kind of come to an understanding and, work together. Hopefully we can see them kind of pair up together in the end and both use their steel balls and some kind of like combination attack. Having the ex-guard paired up with the executioner could be a freaking dope-ass battle to read through. But either way, for now it's been your professional degenerate Diavolo, and I'll see you all in a little bit. Bye.